Flags are so much fun. I don't know about you, but lately it's felt like penalties are what's deciding the outcomes of games, which isn't great. So I wanted to find out if we're crazy or if flags are actually becoming a big problem in the modern NFL. So let's find out if flags are ruining football. Again.
Wicked or weakness, you gotta see this. Yeah.
I made a similar video last year, but this time I want to go a lot
deeper.
Who's to blame for flags? Does the NFL even care about player safety? And what if flags are a good thing? But first, let's get the obvious stuff out of the way. Flags are being called at an all-time rate this season, and we're on pace for one of the most penalized seasons in NFL history. Early season jitters? Nah, dude, this is a whole new can of worms. Here are the most penalized weeks from 2021 through 2023. Now throw 24 in there. Yeah, not good. And you know what's funnier than 24? 25! What are we talking about here? Record highs! When I made my flag video last year, I told you, don't even worry, there aren't more penalties. I wasn't projecting that there would be 200 plus penalties in week 13, 15, 16, and 17. We have a full-blown disaster on our hands. And if you don't know much about football, 13 through 17 are pretty important weeks in the season. As you can see, 2024 was a complete disaster for flags, and 2025 is lapping it faster than a roided up secretariat. We're on pace to see well over 4,000 penalties this year. That's unheard of. And I know what you're thinking. Duh, of course teams are more penalized early in the season. Here are the first 2-week averages. There's still a crazy pattern here. Like, can you believe this? I'm filming this after week 2, so this is how many flags were called in week 3. I don't know if the number's high or low, but I really hope it proves my point. No matter which metric you use, per play, per game, it all comes out to one big fuck you for 2025. Speaking of fuck yous, let's talk about roughing the passer. Not to sound like your drunk uncle, but I'm sick of roughing the passer, man. It's getting old at this point. Because we're not seeing more false starts or offsides, none of the objective 5-yard stuff. We're seeing insanely more 15-yard game-changing subjective penalties. It's a problem, man, and I'm sorry if I sound like an angry idiot this whole video, but in researching for this video, it just got me more and more upset the further I went down the rabbit hole. In 2021, the NFL came out and said, we have a problem. We are calling too many roughing the passer penalties. And they were. They were calling 8.5 roughing calls a week. Guess how many we have through the first 2 weeks of this year? 9.5. A whole roughing call extra to the issue the NFL said they needed to fix. Even 2024, which was an officiating disaster, we only saw about 5.5 per week. You want to get even more mad? More than half of the worst and most subjective penalty in all of sports is being called in the fourth quarter, with 6 penalties going in the last 5 minutes of the fourth this year. 6! In the demon year of 2021, we had 14 roughing the passer penalties in the last 5 minutes of the game. This year, we're on pace for 54! Yeah, that's a problem. A big one. And the thing is, it's becoming increasingly obvious that defenders are more careful than ever with quarterbacks. Brian Burns didn't even want to tackle Dak. He hugged the guy and hoped everybody else would notice. Because at this point, just put a flag belt and a red shirt around the quarterback. What's the point? Just remove the sack altogether. You can't use your whole weight to tackle the quarterback? We're debating gravity now? You can't hit a quarterback's head even if they lean into you like Lionel Messi? That's Dak's favorite move, by the way, the headbutt to get 15 yards. It's such a joke. And the NFL would argue that they're doing this to maximize player safety. But is anyone actually buying that? It's bad enough that Roger makes Guardians caps look like pseudoscience, even though they do work. I'll spare you the science, but they do work, like really well. But I'm starting to think that the NFL cares less about player safety and more about protecting owners' investments, because quarterbacks are the only position that get this special treatment. If the NFL was really worried about quarterback safety, why are we still talking about the turf thing? Purdy and Burrow have both gone down to turf toe, and you don't have to be a doctor to know that turf toe is more common on turf. Take it away, Cam Ward.
We practice on grass while we don't play on grass.
Yeah, I blame Roger and the NFL fat cats more than anyone. They're to blame here. I talked about last year about how officials have a really tough job. They have to call a bunch of penalties throughout the game, and they're usually right. But what if they're not? What if some officials just suck? I mean, at this point, the NFL shop should just sell black and white t-shirts and advertise them, since that's the only thing the NFL cares about at this point. The refs. People worry about showing T Swift too much, but I'm sick of seeing the zebras, alright? I didn't turn on Madagascar.
All hail the New York Giants!
So which officiating crews should we actually care about? I mean, Bill Vinovich basically cost my Giants the game last week. He must be a real stickler, and he's one of the more relaxed officials in the whole NFL. What is going on here? There's no common denominator between let 'em play refs and sticklers. They all basically call the same distribution of flags, and each season they have different amounts, but it all pretty much equals out to be the same. Yeah, man, it's not like a Chris Paul, Scott Foster thing. The NFL referees are actually fairly consistent, so it simply can't be a referee issue. This is a case-by-case basis. These dudes don't even have favorite flags. I checked. I really wanted to come on here and tell you that Sean Hockley and Cleet Blakeman are the real enemies of the NFL season, but it's just, like, not true. So you can keep your Land Clark posters hung up if you got them. Where are my Land Clark fans at? So I don't blame the refs. They're honestly just doing what they're told. And I'm really starting to think, does the NFL think refs are just like stupid? What is even the point of a virtual measurement? It's the most patronizing technology I've ever seen. In a world where AI is swallowing up jobs faster than Pac-Man, you really think this was the issue? This is the problem we needed to solve? It barely even works. And oh my God, the AI float ad is the worst thing I've seen on my television since, God, the Aaron Hernandez hearing? But back to flags, because of course it's easy to point fingers at the league, but the teams have to be at fault kind of, right? And there actually is a common denominator between the most penalized teams. Flags aren't really on the player. Hell, I'd argue they're not even solely on the coach. It's more so about organizational culture. As you can see, the top 5 most penalized teams over the past half decade here, none of them have good cultures, especially number 1 up there. Just disasters waiting to happen. And when you go further down the list, teams like the Bills and the Ravens pop up for most penalties, but overall you can tell the teams at the bottom of this list are usually the ones with shaky culture at best. And yes, the Chiefs have gotten a few calls in the past half decade. They're one of the less penalized teams over the past half decade. But check out the next thing I found. I put a list together of the 5 most subjective and prevalent penalties in the NFL. Defensive pass interference, roughing the passer, unnecessary roughness, defensive holding, and offensive holding. You can make some tweaks to your own list. I'm going with my big 5, alright? It's like the worst Avengers of all time. Here are the top 5 most penalized teams within those markers. Yeah, what the fuck? The 3 most successful teams in the AFC, and a team that I was convinced the game was rigged for. And the Saints. So there you go. But we don't need to talk about them. The point is that these are all winning cultures. And if you draw it out to the top 10, it still shows a lot of winning organizations. The average win total here is well over 500. So what's the deal? I think there are 2 major ways to interpret this data, and I'm not gonna make a stance, all right? I'm leaving it up to you, the fan, all right? Comment down below what you think. The cynical approach is to believe that these flags come out to even the score and keep parity between good and bad teams. Believing this outcome would mean that the game, at least in part, has got to be rigged, right? The optimistic approach is that the more physical teams tend to win more games and flags are just a byproduct. Believing this almost entirely discounts the thought that the NFL is more advanced and spread out than ever before. It's more optimistic because you believe the integrity of grit and toughness is still present in the modern NFL. So as crazy as it sounds, taking penalties might not be the worst thing. Yes, we have a flag problem and changes need to be made. But as fans, there might be some value to reframing the whole thing. Either flags are a sign of respect for a quality team, or they go to show that the heart of the game is still very much alive in grit, toughness, hard hits, and all that shit. So it's up to you now. Find out what kind of fan you really are. Until then, I've been HUNNABALL, and I'm HUNNABALLing because the Giants are 0-3.
ball game.